Happy June 5th. This is Office
Happy
Flash
June 5th.
Friday. I'm Doug Splinter.
Yeah.
Joined
I'm
by
Todd Kidda.
Yep.
Yep.
From Minneapolis and St. Louis,
Yeah.
respectively. We hope everyone's doing well out there. It's been a week of listening and learning for a lot of us, myself included. So I hope everyone's doing well. And we'll kind of leave that part at that. I have some topics for today that are a little forward-looking, some interesting SharePoint stuff, multilingual, which you know is a huge passion of mine. Like the accessibility and multilingual thing for me has always been a really big deal. And so we had some announcements on top of that, some lists, some stream, and some identity stuff. What do you got going on?
I've got some UI flows, some Power Apps portals. Like we don't talk about that too often, do we? And some Power BI stuff.
Yeah, I hear about it from Bart Sneary, the Dynamics architect on my team, all the time, right? I mean, that's the way to get Power Apps outside
to the world, right?
To the world, to the and what people have built in some of those things in rapid prototype sprints and everything, it's kind of amazing. So yeah, all right.
I think it's one of those things where we're still kind of learning how to best use those tools and evolving patterns around getting this stuff out. So yeah, I agree.
Awesome. And then next week, I'll be back with some of the demo sequences after all the announcements at Build. I said I had to retool some of that stuff because it got way easier, way better, way faster, like the entire Teams app stuff and everything else. So I got access to a bunch of that stuff in my preview tenant this week. So we'll be back on the air showing you the even easier way to achieve some of the outcomes we had. And then Brian Cowie from the Power Apps team, who used to lead the SharePoint user group in the Twin Cities, he built some really sophisticated Power Apps leveraging. Like he took my little elementary school coding work that we did together and took it up to PhD level. So I'll see if we can get Brian to maybe pop on and share some of that as well as we go through that contextual Teams applications plus other things.
I love that.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk a little Teams, shall we? What's new? There was some stuff around Teams. Some of these announcements are a little bit of a retread, I think. But some of it I kind of missed. So for people that change the presenter and lobby settings, there's some like click items for downloading participation reports and stuff. So I don't know. Sometimes these changes have come out and I miss them. So they're sort of highlighting some of the UI changes on that. The tenant-wide selection for who can present. We've all learned about how to do that stuff. Background effects policies can be set. We'll be able to soon assign a background effects policy at a user level. So continual evolution of policy. Are some people allowed to have a background and some are not? Believe it or not, there have been problems with backgrounds. But there's also problems if you
I'm sure there's good reasons for
photos, right? I mean, like some things are a human training control and should not be a technical control, in my personal opinion.
Totally with you. Yeah.
All right, better policy controls over screen sharing from chats. One of the things I was excited about was the reverse number lookup enhancement. So if you are using Teams as a phone system, RNL got a significant uplift. Poly. I'm going to have a hard time with that one for years. Poly, which is the fusion of Plantronics and Polycom, announced some new room system stuff for the Team stuff. Jabra Panicast had it. Link, Epos, and Jabra announced new peripherals. So a lot of announcements on the device frontiers for Teams. So if you're looking for that stuff and you haven't been out right there, there's also some stuff from Crestron and Polycom and Link. There's some offers for people who are doing work from home programs. And so if you have people who are going to be in extended scenarios, you're looking for alternate hardware, some great stuff got announced around that. The templates and team stuff, which we'd covered a little bit back in preview, but now it's sort of out there and you get kind of that template management. There's a deep dive blog link on the post we have, so you can go dive into that. And then we're going to spend a little more time on Microsoft lists, but obviously lists in Teams. And for those of you who've been SharePoint or SharePoint a long time, this is the uplift of SharePoint lists into a first-party service called lists, right? Like lists is taking, sort of in the best sense, becoming its own microservice, right?
Yep.
And it will have sophistication and capabilities. It doesn't mean you won't be able to present, leverage, use, and event lists like you always could over in SharePoint, but lists will become this more adaptive service across the entire estate to be able to use, embedded, and the rest of the stuff. And as things like Fluid Framework come to these components, if you haven't played around with Whiteboard, with the Whiteboard templates and putting those little note card components in and the rest of the stuff, right? There's some really powerful stuff over in Microsoft Whiteboard. When you start to think about all this stuff coming together under the Fluid framework, we'll be able to have all these little adaptive cards and contexts and dashboards and stuff, and to be able to construct visualizations and components with highly scalable multi-person access in ways we never could before. So the Fluid framework stuff is going to be coming to all this stuff, but one of the important foundational things of that is these individual services need to be able to take their destiny and sort of uplift it and not be constrained by wrappers around them. And so when we get to, talking about where SharePoint's headed with their, the SharePoint roadmap check-in, some of these things are carving a way to have their own independent destiny, and it's a good thing. They're not losing their integration. They're just getting a bunch of uplift for the service on their own. And essentially lists is getting that.
So what I'm hearing there is lists, the idea of lists aren't necessarily going to be tightly coupled with SharePoint.
That's correct. Yep. They'll be integrated.
List service doesn't necessarily care that it lives in SharePoint, sure cares about lists.
But yeah, so if you look at, you can now just create a list over directly within, Teams. Now, will there always be some landing zones for that kind of stuff? Yeah, but it's just a little more of an independent service on top of that. There's also, if you're still in a conversion process, they have the Upgrade Advisor got some work done to it, which is actually a pretty cool service. We covered the Visual Studio extension for Teams and for Visual Studio Code on top of it. Right. I would just say, here, just go do it. Like this is amazing stuff. And obviously the stuff from Build and most of the rest of the announcements on top of that were exactly the same things we covered with Build and Power BI and the rest of it. So right. they're rolled up. Now there was one interesting one for my beloved Gov customers out there for message translation hit GCC and GCC High. So, so you can actually do translation on top of it. That's actually a fairly tough thing to do because of how that information has to flow. So they had to do a lot of back-end engineering work to put the back-end translation services in a place that's allowed to communicate with the GCC High Cloud with proper bubbling and the rest of the stuff. So that was, some of these things are actually a lot harder because they're not, the attestation and security of them goes higher when you go into.
I can't imagine. I mean, the complexity that goes into that engineering is just unbelievable.
It's a lot, and so this one really shows a huge thing. So there's a nice little roundup component on things as to what happened on top of it. So some good stuff inside of it. Maybe a couple of in case you missed it things on top of it. Here's probably my favorite news item for the day, and that is multilingual publishing for pages and news posts. Right now, I've done a tremendous amount of work around news. Did you know about this one at all, or no?
I did not know.
All right, so I cannot tell you like how excited I was to see this one come on top of it. And so essentially it allows you to create and translate pages, set translator roles, and get alerts when pages are ready to be translated, updated, and published. Right. So they break down exactly how it works, right? Once a com site has been created, you can enable the multilingual publishing, choose the additional languages to support on top of that site. And then you can basically say, hey, I'd like to create a copy page for each language. And then you can manually translate the copy on the page. So they've got the different components. When page approvals are turned on, then the page translations have to be approved. And so it's actually, I don't know if it's perfect, but it's pretty good looking. And I have not had a chance to play with it, but I'm going to. And so essentially what we've been asking for the longest time is, hey, where's multilingual on modern? If you're a classic SharePoint person, you were doing variations and the rest of these kind of things, right? So there, for comm sites and news pages, which are the number 1 and 2 things people have been asking for this for, you now have that option to explore and start leveraging this feature set. So I'm excited to dig in on this and see how good it is against like the work I've done in the past around this. So, and I don't know, but I am. It's a big step forward. So hooray. And that's all I have to say about that. All right. There was a deeper dive on top of it where they went through exactly what. So they have the whole thing as to exactly how you go about doing it, how you do enablement stuff. So it wasn't just kind of the shallow stuff, the actual, like, there's some deeper dive documentation, like that. It's pretty rich content that's out on this topic. So if you are an organization who has that need for multilingual comm sites, pages, and news, then let's go hit it and start a discussion around where it's at and where it needs to go and get that feedback back up through user voice to the engineering teams.
So we have the features and we have the prescriptive guidance.
Yeah, and also just some like experiential stuff, blog post style about it, right? Not just the announcement of the feature, but also how people are going to do it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So obviously, we did the roadmap pip stop was released. If you haven't checked it out, SharePoint home sites are live, right? Meaning available to everyone. We've covered those for a long time, but it'll be out there. In addition, the home site will automatically be set to be an organizational news site and have organization-wide search pre-configured. So pay attention to that. If you know, that's obviously some modifiable behavior, but that's what's going to happen. And they basically go through the SPO framework as to how to designate a site as the home site and the rest of that kind of stuff. There's a web part modification. The save for later is now available for modern, so they continue to move those some of the more advanced web parts forward on top of it. We've covered the Yammer conversation parts on top of that stuff, but in related news, one of my favorite things, they're introducing the ability for SharePoint page authors to schedule page and news post publication for a future date and time.
Okay, that's good. Good stuff.
That's awesome, right? The only way I could do that before was through my API technique.
Wow.
You know?
Okay. Yeah.
And so for this is a pretty cool thing where you can just come in and say, I want this to magically arrive on a certain date. So I'm kind of excited about this because, you know, we generate a lot of stuff in the MTC for, now I got to see how much API access I have for this or if it's only in the UI. But it would be nice maybe to say, I want to have a bundle of like announcements from an industry like healthcare or something, and to have those land on the day of the healthcare conference or something along those lines, right? And so I'm looking forward to seeing how flexible this is from a back-end standpoint. But when scheduling is enabled, you'll be able to set a date and time and have that stuff come on it. It says you can also edit page and remove it, and then you can publish immediately using the normal stuff. So I thought the page scheduling was pretty cool.
That's great. That's great. That's awesome.
Yeah, highly useful. The other one, extended footers. It just gives you the ability to put more footer data down at the bottom and have that stuff. So I guess the biggest thing would be all the refinement. We're going to talk a little more about lists on that, but there's a whole bunch of stuff around list capabilities that were released and put out there, and then create lists from an Excel table, which was shown for a couple times at SharePoint Fest and SharePoint Conference. They now have that. You point at the Excel spreadsheet and up it becomes into a list. And given the first party nature of the list service now, that's pretty cool, right? So you can convert some of those things into dynamic on top of it. And then the SharePoint migration tool got some uplift on top of it for going from file shares and sort of, it just got some improvements around targeting SharePoint teams, et cetera. So it says, hey, you can do that with a whole set of estates. So you should go check out the update for the SharePoint migration tool. We've covered that a couple times, kind of back around the 120s or so. But if you haven't tuned back in, you should go check out the blog post on the SPMT from this link we put out there, because if you're still in, I got a lot of old school stuff that I haven't moved yet, there are approaches to doing that. And this is an important part of the non-third party tool set that allows you to do that on top of it. Okay. I put this one in a separate one because I was super excited about it. Did you know that you can now just go into Stream and just like hit Stream on your tenancy and then say you want to do a screen recording, and it'll just activate the screen recording and you can just upload it?
Like just in a web browser?
Yeah.
No, I legit did not know that. No.
Yeah. Awesome. So Stream now has just, I want to upload a video. No, I want to record a screen. Now, if you're like me, you either go into PowerPoint and you inject a screen recording, you save the video out, or you just launch a screen recorder and you save the video down, then you upload it in. But it's
because people have been using things like maybe even the Experts Game Bar, Camtasia, OBS, those kinds of things. But sometimes you just need a screen recording.
You want to record a quick how-to video to show people, to illustrate something, whatever it is. So you can just go in and then start screen recording, and then at the end it says, hey, are you just in an application window, or like, what are you going to do? And then it starts the recording, and then you can review it and upload it, and you're done.
Okay, that's awesome. All right, I'm in. I think too.
There's a lot of times that's a super useful thing, and you don't need some crazy third-party tool. Now, obviously, there are browser requirements in order to be able to have the browser components that would allow such a thing to occur, and that would essentially be Microsoft Windows 10, Edge version 79 and above, Chrome 74 and above on 10 and Mac OS. Safari is not supported because Safari doesn't have the API to support screen recording. Sorry. And then obviously Stream Mobile on iOS and Android is not supported in mobile browsers, meaning we're not going to somehow do the capture off the mobile device. Although you can, if you do need to get off mobile device, You and I tested one time. I actually did a video game test with Todd where I screen shared from my Android device into a Teams meeting with a full motion video game playing, and you can record the meeting, but that's the whole record, download, upload. So screen recording, good for desktops with the right browser. Yeah.
So our friend Jake is asking, where do you find that option in Stream to do that? Do you know where to go get that?
So it says right up top, if you look on top under Create, you'll see the record screen button.
There we go. Okay. And is that rolling out, or is that out for everybody? Do we know?
I believe it's GA, but I can double check. If you're not seeing it, it should be. I mean, I know it's rolling. Yeah. It's not like a preview feature. It might be not deployed to your tenancy yet, but it should be. Now there also, I have not looked to see if there's also a policy control where someone could turn that off, like if you don't have contribution rights or something. So I haven't explored the security rights. I just kind of missed this. And so
I didn't know about it either. That's great.
Yeah, I can go dig and find out if there's more. If it's
because honestly, how many times have you seen? I can't tell you how many times I've seen internal videos or even maybe external videos of Microsoft people, joining a Teams meeting of one and recording it.
That's a recommended best practice, right? Like it's or the old trick with PowerPoint or whatever it is. So anyway, native screen recording directly inside of Stream. I'll check out and see if there is restrictions on. I do not know if this is GovCloud or not. Like I haven't dug into it, but anyway, so there you go. Cool. Create screen recording straight up. I'll get some more details and get an answer on availability.
That's a useful for everyone feature. I think everyone can use that.
Yeah, I think it is. I'm just going to leave this and say that I found a digest that went everything about the announcements about lists and had all the different sessions and all the resource stuff and everything else. So I put that URL in the show notes that we're going to post as soon as this thing goes live. So kind of everything about lists, which is just resources, tech community, Microsoft-lists. So it's pretty easy to get to. So if you do want to dig in more on lists, it's kind of a good curated collection of everything we announced.
I just know I'm excited about lists, man. I think we're going to see some really a lot of ingenuity and creativity and leveraging of that, along with some of the other Swiss Army knife tools that we have. I'm pretty pumped about lists.
Yep. Okay, I got one more blog post people to check out. There's a bunch of identity partnership announced as part of secure remote access to cloud applications that include using, MCAS capabilities, the Azure AD App Proxy, and there's a whole bunch of announcements about integrations with, Zscaler and the F5 Big IP and the Citrix Application Delivery Controller and the rest of the stuff. So if you haven't looked at all the announcements around presenting applications securely through MCAS and Azure AD integration, the rest of it, this particular post that's out there is a good roll-up as to the current state of our partnerships that are not just all about the Microsoft products. So if you have these other components and you're integrated, there's all this alliance work been done, and that plus the Intelligence Security Alliance stuff equates to better signals and better security. So it's me. So we're never going to have a show, almost never, without security in some context. So there you go. All right, Mr. Kidda, I went long. I'm sorry. I think we'll turn this over to getting you going from a content.
I think you've given me a fair amount of time for the content that I have, so I'm totally good, man.
Well, you did say that you were running a little short on it, so let's put you center stage, and hopefully that.
You just let me know when I'm ready.
I think you are ready.
Let's do it, man. All right, this one is really cool because I think it's showing off several of the investments that we're making inside of UI flows for Power Automate to do our RPA stuff. So how can you do securely remote desktop automation with UI flows? So we've added that, and one of the things that we've added to the product to enable this is this idea of, let me show you, just secure inputs, right? So things that are inputs such as passwords, and what do you not want? You don't want that stuff to be stored in your flow run history, right? So by turning on this is a secure input, we're not going to store usernames and passwords in that flow run history for when you come back and look at the debug stuff. So
you're saying we're not going to put passwords in clear text logs? That's courteous.
Correct. Courteous is the right way to put it. Yeah. So, but we're, so this example kind of walks through showing integration with Azure Key Vault, the secure inputs to do remote desktop automation.
Okay.
That's really
wonderful. The Key Vault integration really puts a smile on my face. So that's great.
For sure. So, you can see here, it's as simple as get the secret, get the username, get the password, and then pass those things to the RDP session flow. So using secure inputs, it's that simple. But I think, man, this product's getting mature pretty quickly. Excuse me. And I think I was excited to see this level of integration with remote desktop, key vault, secure inputs. I think it's pretty slick bringing together of some capabilities here. So
Nice.
Good stuff. Yeah. All right. So I mentioned I have some Power BI, some Power Apps portal stuff, a couple things. I really thought this was some nice integration with Power BI. So again, Power Apps portals is that thing where you want to present things out to people in the world, not necessarily people that are logged into your organization, those kinds of things. It's a landing page where people can come and look at things. You read information out of maybe the common data service, maybe it's product catalog, those types of things. But now being able to basically do Power BI embedded type capability inside of Power Apps portals. So that's what this is. So you can see there's a picker here to go select your workspace. Are you doing a dashboard or report? What tile? And I have a child entering the room. You know what? He's gonna watch. So all right. So we have
There's nothing wrong with that.
You want to come get this guy?
Keep rolling with it. It's all good.
so add a report to here.
We've been talking about the humanity of work right now, and that was just completely in action right there. That's awesome.
Clark. He's a cool guy. All right. So I like this because you can actually pass in roles as well. So what does that mean? So if you're doing role level security inside of Power BI, you can, when you're doing the embedding inside your Power Apps portal, you can specify what role you want to be passed to the Power BI model when you're someone's viewing this from the Power App portal. So that's pretty cool. And you can set filters. So it's like multi-use, right? If you have maybe one type of role you want to do on one portal, another on another portal, you can configure that. So that's pretty slick. So that basically this is Power BI embedded. But what do they say? Point, click, draggy, droppy kind of a mentality. So it's pretty slick.
Yeah.
Another Power Apps portal thing here. We've now added the Power Platform Admin Center continues to mature. So now we're actually adding management capability of the Power Apps portals from the Power Platform Admin Center. That's a mouthful, I find, when I'm saying some of these things, but that's kind of what we got here. So the Power Apps portals admin center is a viewable Power Admin Center. So that's kind of just a small thing, but there we go. So a few more Power BI things. I'm going to actually save one of these for last because I think it's pretty cool. So just a quick note that it's that time of the year where it's time to ship a new version of the Power BI report server. Remember, we're shipping these, I think, like 3 times a year, along with the report server, as well as its associated Power BI desktop. So remember, every version of Power BI report server comes with its own version of Power BI desktop. So those go one-to-one. You don't use the same monthly update if you're using Power BI report server. So a lot of the great things that have been added to Power BI service and desktop over the last 4 months have been brought into the report server. So some of the things that I want to call out, the decomp tree, that is one of the most amazing visuals when I show that to people, when they can see how easy it is to start breaking things down and even get suggestions for how to drill into your data. That's a big deal. So the decomp tree is pretty amazing. Hierarchical slicer, that's another big one. The new filter pane experience is a big change. Updates to some of the DAX. So we talked about some of these before. But the first non-blank, last non-blank value functions are there. Coalesce is a great one that people use in SQL all the time. That's now in the report server. Visual drop shadows. So bringing that feature back again. So check that out. If you're doing report server, it's time to get your update out there and make your users happy. This one's a quick hit, but this one I think kind of starts to complete the migration from the legacy Power BI workspace experience to the new workspace experience. So it's been possible for quite a while, right, to create new workspaces and upgrade old workspaces to new workspaces. But I think these features that we're talking about here that are coming are going to kind of complete that journey. So doing things like you can now block the creation of classic workspaces. That's a good one. Hide empty classic workspaces. I like the automatic upgrade of classic, right? and then a tool for bulk upgrade of Classic to the new workspace experience. So I think this kind of rounds it out. So I think hopefully by the end of the year, the end of the calendar year, most people will be up to the new workspace experience where so many of the new capabilities are lighting up. And it's just kind of where you need to be. I mean, if you can be there today, get your workspaces upgraded. And I think some of these features are really going to enable you, especially for organizations that have really operationalized Power BI and kind of have quite a bit of activity. So, right, if you have more than just a couple workspaces, you kind of have to put some of this automation behind it and to kind of get there. So I'm pretty happy with what I see here, and I think this kind of rounds it out. Last but not least, this one is very, very cool. I spent a lot of time talking about data flows and how they augment. They're not the star of the show, right? The star of the show in Power BI is like the data set and the report and the dashboard. That's the stuff that like really gets the user touch. But like data flows really enable accessibility to data in your organization and really enable that Lego brick mentality of enterprise data sets and presenting those to users in a curated way. So data flows are super, super important in my mind to creating a data culture. Now, one of the things, if you've created, and I think we've covered this in demo before, right? Where if you create a Power BI data set against data flows, it's an import approach. So you have to open Power BI desktop, connect to a data flow, and you're importing that into your model. But what this is enabling you to do now, if you have Power BI Premium, you can do a direct query to your data flows, which is pretty cool. And those data flows could be coming from all kinds of different places. Your Azure Data Lake store, APIs, other SQL servers, those kinds of things. But this enables using the enhanced data flows compute engine, which behind the scenes is basically using like SQL Server technology, to actually enable people to do direct query against these curated data sets rather than importing all of that data local. So this is just another step along the journey to really enable a data culture and access to enterprise data sets without in a really highly curated and it's all about the presentation, right? And getting data to the user.
And so, performance. It's a performance method for doing so.
Performance, yes. Is that a word yet, by the way? Like, I think that's the best
I don't know.
word.
We've been using it forever, right?
Yeah.
So if it's not, it's time for Webster to get on it.
That's right. Come on, Webster. So I definitely, again, if you're kind of just getting started with data flows as an enterprise idea and how to like think about these as Lego bricks, check out this documentation because this talks about things like, splitting the ingestion and transformation, right? So have one data flow to get the data and land it, right? And then have another data, because that's really how you're going to take advantage of that enhanced compute engine and things like that. So it's a non-obvious thing, right? If you're getting started, you have to kind of have to be told that and taught that. But what it really helps you also understand what's actually happening, right? So I would check this out. Even some things like split data flows when connecting to SharePoint because of the way that the compute engine works and those kinds of things. But I'm really happy with where data flows are going. I did actually with one of your teammates up there, I did a hackathon with a customer last week with Bart Sneary, who does Dynamics Fortnite Friday. And we worked with this customer and showed the power of data flows and ingest of data. And we're really created this amazing architecture that's going to enable them to unlock all of their data with very few components and build an enterprise.
That customer was particularly happy. We got thank you notes. Right?
Yeah.
So that's not unheard of, but it's nice when it happens. I mean,
for sure.
But they were like, wow, that really showed us what we could do. So,
but like, I think the tagline of Power BI at this point, if people are just kind of getting familiar with it, is Power BI. It's not just a visualization tool. I mean, it's a enterprise data platform. It's incredible. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah. So let's see. So Christopher's asking, I love the new YouTube format. We'll end with a question. Is that okay, Doug?
Yeah, of course.
Isn't Power BI highly licensed? How can you publish something to the public as they are not licensed user? That is a great question. So there's actually a feature in Power BI called publish to web. If you're truly talking about publishing to anonymous users who are not logged in, not part of your organization, and you don't care who they are, that's included. That's called publish to web. That can be turned on and off in the admin center, of course.
That's right.
Yeah, so that
and some of the times when you see it, like, and licensing can vary based if you're putting it like a Power App portal, and you're doing the embedded, then you can pay the freight a couple of different ways through embedded. So it does depend. Some things will include that entitlement, but publish to web is a whole separate thing. It's not exploratory. It's more static, right? When you do the publish to web,
right?
But you got lots of options, and the Power BI embedded route is, obviously designed for internet scale embedding and deployment. So you're not in that same model. It's more designed for newspaper type scenarios or extranet embedding, as opposed to, highly exploratory data use.
Which is really
fair way to put it. I mean,
I wasn't putting two and two together that Christopher was probably asking about in context of this. So this is that scenario that he was talking about. So this is really for the masses, right? This is not
Power BI embedded.
Yeah, exactly. So this is not really individual users. This is like whoever's hitting your Power BI app portal, right? It's using that Power BI embedded capability. So you do not have to license these users that are using this from a Power BI.
The bottom line is there's a lot of cost-effective ways based on the scale of the community you're addressing to get the data out there. Yeah. The more dynamic it is, the more there will be some cost associated with it, but a lot of options.
Yeah, and to be clear, like, this is not designed to build an internal BI solution. That's not what this is for, right? This is for delivering insights out to the world kind of in a simple way, newspaper style embedding, right? Kind of how you said. Yeah. Cool. So that's fun. Thanks, Christopher, for the question. And that's all I got.
Well, that's all I got too. We're at 11:02. Thanks for joining. We'll be back next week. A little more Teams API app embedding, maybe a little more of an advanced example of all that and embedding and doing the new stuff and some VS Code. I'm gonna, even if there's super cool announcements, I'll cover them briefly, but I'm really gonna focus on a little showcase of all that goo with all the build announcements next week.
Lovely.
And, so then if there's other announcements, we'll kick them out a week. The world can wait. You got to learn something about where you're at. What was that one comedian that we used to quote all the time? He's like, hey, geeks, can you take a couple of weeks off? Right. Can you just not change it for a while so that I can catch up? And that's so I kind of really want to finish off this Teams app template plus Power App solution, because that's like the low code, no code extension capabilities of what we got going on. So I really want to focus next week on deploying an app template from scratch when you just have an Azure subscription, you have whatever, and a custom Power App. So something that somebody else built that you just want to suck it in and use it, and that's like a sample that Microsoft's produced or someone else. So you're going to host it. And one you built from Power Apps. And we're going to show that ingestion next week and start from nothing and get to having a couple of apps going. And the week after, I'm going to show the low code, no code bot ingestion. So we'll walk through those processes for how we get there and how you deploy those things. And we'll spend some time on that over the next few weeks to get to real about Teams app extensions. So
cool. Sounds good.
I got nothing else. Everybody have a great and safe weekend. Take care of yourselves and your families, and we'll see you in a week.
All right. Be kind to each other. See ya.